We are going to begin, and we will begin with the multiple public comment cards. Mr. Previn. You can have 2 minutes for all of the items and then a minute for general public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. Do you care about the order? Do you mind if I give my general public comment first?
Go for it. Give him a 1 minute and then do the two.
Appreciate your flexibility. First of all, I would like to address the chair, but also, is this a quorum?
Yes.
Oh, you have a three. There's a three. Okay, fine. So it's you and Councilmember Nuri Martinez, who was just playing the role of Council President downstairs. And unfortunately, Ms. Martinez was completely tone deaf.
Wait, whoa. It's general public comment on matters under the jurisdiction of this committee.
Okay, so there was a Vision Zero item that I really wanted to speak on, but Councilmember Martinez was busy pretending that the kiosk wasn't working today. So Sean Murphy and myself...
Mr. Previn, that isn't under the jurisdiction. General public comment is under matters of the jurisdiction of this committee.
Okay, so
not what happens downstairs.
Give me back a little time because you're giving me lectures about, okay, then the preferential parking district, that Michael Nagel and Selita Reynolds, 276, we've made Public Record Act requests to get the postings, to get information, and Felix Valde and the whole team have just denied our access to those records. So you need to provide those records, and please urge Mr. Nagel and the city attorney to do that. Okay, now for the items on the agenda. By the way,
John.
I very much appreciate your patience. It's very frustrating, as you can imagine, when you spend the whole morning listening to all those fantastic presentations, and then you're called up only to be told there's no cards for you, and Supervisor-to-be Martinez, in a dream she has, just simply violates you, and then doesn't care.
Mr. Previn.
Okay, fine. So item number one, as you know, is more. You guys are rolling large, let's just agree, in the 22-foot, we got to get these big vehicles out of the neighborhoods. This is similar to, let's get residential parking protected in the preferential parking districts, like in my neighborhood, Studio City, PPD 276, up and down Ventura Boulevard, and it's all being done by a kind of a group that's going to benefit, but all the workers, the ordinary blokes and folks in Los Angeles who work on the boulevard are going to be provided $75 tickets and then a smart boot from Mitchell Englander. And now I know you and Mitchell Englander don't agree on everything, and some things you do agree on, but that's not cool. That's not a solution. And if it happens in my neighborhood, in Studio City, then in Sherman Oaks and right next door. And so today you have several preferential parking district revisions and a couple of new ones. And so I don't know. In the meantime, what you should be working on, which I know you want to be working on, is finding a place for people who, 60% of the homeless population are not organic mental illness, pooping on themselves in the corner. 60 or so % are people like the staff who are all moving to Las Vegas on retirement because they can't afford to live here. So those people are trying to sleep in their Outlander or their station wagon, and now what they're getting is increased friction and torture. And nowhere is there I know there are some efforts, a place to go. So, I think that listening to the public is something that is your responsibility. The New York Times said, why are people so bad at taking negative feedback? Mr. Graciano thinks that my delivery is off, and I agree. Sometimes I get frustrated. But
thank you, Mr. President.
You ought to take public comments, and you ought to follow up on following the law.
Thank you very much. Mr. Herman. Two minutes on multiple items, 1 minute on general public comment.
Well, let's start off on item one. Bitch O'Farrell, fuck you. Let's start off on item two. Parking restrictions from Herman Jason Westin. Fuck you too, Herbie. Because there's a pattern and practice that we need investigated under Safe Street Acts. Don't we take federal state dollars for Safe Street Acts? Or have we forgotten what 28 USC 1331-1345-2201 means? It means violent crime control. That you suppress people from parking in areas that they find as a sanctuary city. But yet you use criminal enforcement of writing up misdemeanor bullshit tickets for what? Pattern and practice. Active Transportation Program Little Tokyo, Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project for Safe Streets and Significance Requirements, Community impact statement, not one fucking statement. So you see, this has continued to be unconstitutional. You violate federal law, and you continue under case number 117 CV, for the record, Mr. Rookie Attorney, 00099, J for jackass, K for killer, and B for bitch. Follow the rules of conduct when using force against individuals, as Mr. Previn pointed out, with mental health disabilities, or your non-disability persons that can't afford to pay the rent and they sleep in their goddamn cars. How do you expect them to get to work on time if they can't have a good night rest? Sorry. And then the last one, Homelessness and Poverty Committee, relative to Community Assistant Parking Pilot. Fuck your pilot program. Now my general public comment. For the record, I'd like to submit to the so-called law enforcement of the City of Los Angeles, Police Department, the Mayor and Council, we, the people of the United States, declare war. 42 U.S.C. 141.
Mr. Herman, general public comment at the Transportation Committee is for matters before the Transportation Committee.
1964 Civil Rights Act. 42 U.S.C. 2000D, Dick. Title 6, the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Acts of 1968, 42 U.S.C. 3789D, Safe Street Acts, bitches. And then in my favor, Title 2 of the American Disability Act of 1990, 42 U.S.C. 12131 through 12134, Title 2, Stop Discriminations Against the Homeless, Stop Discrimination Against Non-Disabled People, and fuck you, 42 U.S.C. 1983, Bonin.
Thank you for the enlightening presentation, Mr. Herman. Are there any other speakers here who have filled out cards on multiple items? Is there anybody here for general public comment? Please come on up, sir. Is it general public comment? Okay.
Come on, Stormy. Let's get out of here.
If you could start by identifying yourself for the record, please.
Yes. My name is Ted Landreth. 31 years, this is Alexis Kerouac.
I'm Alexis Kerouac.
We're here together. 31 years ago, I, with my wife Penny, founded the Greater West Hollywood Food Coalition, a volunteer organization to help the homeless. 2 years ago, we founded another one called the Flying Squad. Flying Squad because if you're going to help the homeless, you better do it fast, because they are in trouble if you don't. But I'm not here to criticize. I'm here to salute the CAP program. The CAP program is one of the smartest things I think the City of Los Angeles has ever done for the homeless. And it's not only a good idea, but the way it has been populated and run and managed has been exemplary. We know of it mainly, Alexis and I, through Teresa Mayer, who is here present, who is not a volunteer, she's a super volunteer.
Thank you.
She's the sort of person who goes to work and then answers the phone after work and on weekends and is on the job 24 hours a day.
Thank you, Mr. Landry.
People ought to be.
So you were here for item 9 then, right?
What's that?
That was item 9?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
And you had testimony for item 9 as well?
Correct.
Go ahead now.
I would like to echo a lot of Ted's, Mr. Landreth's assertions there. I think that CAP is a really wonderful program. It's helped me out a lot. Right now, I'm on a break from my job, and I wouldn't have that job if it weren't for, the CAP agency, most specifically Teresa Mayer back there, really doing what it takes to make sure that I get my tickets taken care of so that I have a home to be able to go to. I dwell in an RV, and I have a secondary vehicle that I use for work. I'm one of the ones that falls through the cracks on all the housing programs because of who I am and the fact that I'm not an addict with a criminal history or anything. So, without these kind of programs, and most specifically Teresa Meyer and people like her out there, I wouldn't have a job right now. I wouldn't have a home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so there's no more general public comment, so general public comment is closed. We are going to take items 1 through 7 on consent, and there'll be the direction of the committee to approve those items. That brings us to item number 8.
Item number 8 is a Westin rule motion instructing DOT to conduct a traffic study on the streets bounded by South Cochrane Avenue, Rimpau Boulevard, Venice Boulevard, and West Olympic Boulevard.
Great. Is there anybody here from CD10? Hey, Jordan.
Hey, good
you doing?
afternoon. Jordan Brewer-Keem from Council President Herb Weston's office. Thank you for taking my testimony today. Just real brief, this was kind of an effort led by the community. We do have an influx of projects in the area, and so we just thought that a comprehensive neighborhood traffic study would kind of do well for the area here and just kind of make sure that we are on the right path, that we don't inundate the area with traffic and whatnot. So with your permission, we'd like to move forward and see what the results of the study is.
Great. Do we have a funding source identified?
Yeah, so funding source still needs to be identified within the office, but with your blessing, we'd still like to show the community that we are willing to, move full force with this, and then we would try to identify a funding source, obviously, before we can begin the study.
Is CD10 going to use discretionary funds, or do we need to send it to Budget and Finance?
I don't think we're going to try to take money out of it. I think we're going to try to use our discretionary funds. I'm happy to close the loop on that and ascertain that with the office as well.
Okay, all right. So we'll approve here, but we'll refer to Budget and Finance just so they can do the sign off on the money, if that's okay.
No problem.
Okay. Without objection, this is direction of the committee. That brings us to item number 9. Are there any other public comments on item number 9? If not, if staff can come up.
Item number 9 is a DOT report relative to the status of the Community Assistance Parking Pilot Program.
Great. All right, I believe we have some public comment on this. Come on up. Vanessa Lim and Victor Hinderleiter. Hello.
Hi.
Good
Go
afternoon.
ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Vanessa. I'm an attorney and an Equal Justice Works AmeriCorps Veteran Legal Corps Fellow. I serve homeless veterans and who are facing homelessness with mental disabilities. I work for a nonprofit called Mental Health Advocacy Services, serving people with mental health disabilities. I wanted to come here today to address the council to express and demonstrate our full support for the continuation and expansion of the CAP program. I also wanted to request that the council respectfully consider how some of these changes might be affecting people with disabilities and to ask for accommodations, and either by expanding the eligibility requirements of the current program or by giving discretionary capacity to decision makers within the program to make exceptions either as reasonable accommodations or as in the interest of justice for extenuating circumstances. So I just wanted to say that I understand the limitations of the program and thank you everyone thank everyone at the CAP program for all the great work that they've been doing with the limited resources and funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Victor.
And good afternoon. My name is Victor Hinderleiter, and I'm here to discuss LASA's involvement in the Community Assistance Parking Program. So enrollment into the Coordinated Entry System is an eligibility requirement for the CAP program. Constituents contact LASA to determine whether or not they are currently eligible. In the circumstances when they haven't already been enrolled into the Coordinated Entry System, our team arranges for the completion of a Coordinated Entry System assessment so that they can then become eligible for the CAP program. The Coordinated Entry System is the larger overall system through which we determine eligibility and prioritization for permanent housing interventions, and that assessment is the first step in participating in that larger system. To date, LASA has conducted approximately 80 Coordinated Entry System assessments from constituents that originally called expressing an interest in the CAP program.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Staff from DOT? That closes public comment on this matter.
Good afternoon. Mark Granato, LODOT Division Manager over Parking Operations and Support. We manage the CAP program, and we're excited to present the one-year status report on the pilot project. And here to assist me is two dynamic employees who have really grown the program. Mario Interiano is our administrator, and Teresa Mayer, she is the face of the program. She's been here since the inception of the program and has reached out to folks in the community, has established relationships with our service providers. She's on the ground, working hard to get this up and running. So,
Am I remembering this correctly, that you started this as a student worker at UCLA?
I'm at Loyola Law School.
Loyola Law School, okay, great. Thank you.
that's correct. So in addition to all the time that she spends on the program, she's a full-time law student. So we're really proud to have our folks here put in the hard work and really grow this program. There's been a lot of positive benefits from this program in helping the homeless population and really getting their citations taken care of. So we'll go ahead and provide a brief overview of where we're at on the administrative side of the program, as well as give some demographic and statistical information and see how far we've come. We also do have a few recommendations for your, or asking you to, requesting the committee to approve some recommendations to the council that will revise the guidelines that help us to implement the program, as well as establish CAP as a permanent city program and remove the pilot designation, and then authorize LADOT to make technical corrections to the guidelines to CAP to effectuate the intent of the council going forward. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to staff, and they'll go ahead and provide a overview of the program.
Good afternoon again. My name is Mario Interiano. I'm the CAP administrator. Now, this report, as Mark said, really adheres to the request to provide an update on the efforts to implement the CAP program, also a summary of the effectiveness of the program. Further, this report makes recommendations to adjust the CAP policy guidelines after the first full year of implementation. Now, this program, as you know, allows homeless individuals to, or with an open or unpaid parking citation, to perform community service in lieu of paying the outstanding parking fine amounts. This program has worked typically by notifying individuals or reaching out to individuals either by way of a flyer that's located at the Parking Violations Bureau offices, our website, some of the clinics that we attend as outreach efforts, as well as word of mouth. Now, typically, folks get in contact with our office either through phone call or via email, and CAP staff does an initial review by looking at the number of citations that they may have and determining which citations are eligible. At that point, the applicant is instructed to report to an approved service provider, which is selected by geographical location closest to where the individual is located. Now, once a contract is prepared, it's sent to the service provider. At that point, he or she is enrolled into the CAP program and has 90 days to complete the community service hours. Now, their failure to complete it within 90 days then requires for reinstatement of citation fines and penalties. It also prohibits them from enrolling into the program for a 12-month rolling period. Now, upon completion, the service provider then submits a CAP completion form, and the citations are reduced to zero. Now, if requested, an abstract is provided for an individual so that they can use this as proof to DMV to remove any withholds that allow them to register their vehicles. Now, after year one, we've had approximately 600 people contact our CAP folks, and it could be from an inquiry about the program to actual enrollment. Now, approximately 173 of these individuals have successfully completed our program and have been able to clear their records. Of this, really, there are about 205 plates or vehicles that have gone through this program, which equates to about 505 citations altogether. The amounts of, or the dollar amounts that have been reduced equates to about $80,000 for the first year. Now, the total number of community service hours that have completed to date is approximately 1,500 hours. And the most common types of community service are that of administrative services, which equates to about 41% of the total amount of work that's done, and as well as kitchen work. So these stats can be found on page 2 of the report. Now, the CAP program or the registration process also requires individuals to do or to provide some demographic information. Of this information, and through the month of February, we have determined that by gender, they're about equal. There's a 52% male participation versus the 48% female participation. And by age, the largest group is between 25 to 54 years old, which is about 63% of those participants, followed by those ranging from 55 to 64, which is 27%. The demographic data also shows that African Americans comprise slightly more than half of the participants at 52%, followed by Caucasians at 21%. Again, this information can be found on page 3 of the report. Now, crucial to the success of this program is the collaboration with the service providers and establishment of relationship with LASA and the Family Solution Centers. Ms. Teresa Mayer is here to present a little bit about that and expand a little bit more on our efforts.
Well, we can go into more detail on the program. We have plenty of statistical data. We do have some high-level changes to the program as well. We can also go into detail on that, or we can just sort of summarize some of the
Just
high-level
summarize, probably go into a deeper dive in the Homelessness and Poverty Committee.
Okay. So if you can summarize that, Teresa.
Okay. I'm going to continue speaking on service providers then.
Yeah, just summarize it.
Sure. So in order to have a CAP participant complete their community service, we depend on these service providers. For example, Weingart or the Veterans Affairs Administration, these are our service providers for the CAP program. We work currently with 28 different service providers, and we also work with Family Solution Centers. Family Solution Centers have access already to the coordinated entry system, so this helps facilitate the process of getting them into the CES system and then getting them into the Clarity system to access more services. So far, our program has been in existence now for about a year, and we've attended over 21 different clinics. We've also worked with Mike Bonnen's office with the Manchester Square Clinic, and some of the challenges, we've also worked with LASA as previously presented, and we both rely on each other. And some of the challenges that's been presented to the CAP program is that it's hard for us to work with certain service providers. We're not able to work with as many as we would like because of staffing issues and also certain populations that they serve. But we're continuously trying to do outreach within the community. So now that we've spoken on the different challenges that we've met, we're going to address the recommended changes.
Now, over the course of the first year of the CAP program, we've identified 6 areas where we
We'll do 3.
Okay, we'll do 3. Where we've asked that CAP guidelines be revised for purposes of improving efficiencies, removing obstacles, and preventing abuse. First,
I don't think you need to go through them in detail. We have the report.
All right.
The only thing I would say, and I won't get into it here, I think we can maybe discuss it when it's referred to the Homelessness Committee, is the issue of the program not being able to cover the towing company's fees. That might be something we're able to address in the other committee. There might be a funding source we could do, because that can be pretty prohibitive to somebody getting the vehicle back.
Right.
Yes.
So,
That'd be great.
Okay.
do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. So based on the report that I read, about 215 citations failed to complete the CAP program. So do you have any idea why they didn't complete the process? And if you do, have you incorporated that feedback into your new proposal changes?
Part of the reason I believe that we really don't have specifics as to why these individuals don't finish the program.
You didn't receive any feedback from why they
We
didn't?
received some, and
What was the feedback?
honestly, it can be that life happens. Some of them have to move to a different area. Some of them just don't have the ability to do it at the time. There can be a number of different reasons.
But we have some idea, more or less.
We have
And
some
well, have you incorporated some of that into your new proposal so that we can perhaps address that as they're signing up for the program?
Well, currently, the program gives them an ability so that if they're not going to be able to complete the program, they can reach out to us
Okay.
and ask for an extension.
Okay, so there is
so-
an extension
yes,
component?
yes.
Okay. And those are these, what adjustments can we make to get a higher participation or a higher completion rate? Is there anything we can do to tweak?
So some of the things that we're suggesting is expanding the number of the ticket violations to be allowed under this program, because it was restricted before to not include safety violations.
Okay.
So we went ahead and expanded those type of violations to be under this program, because we had to deny some requests because the parking citations that we received, parking in a red zone in front of a fire
That wasn't
hydrant,
included?
it was not
Okay,
included.
got it.
So
Okay.
now we're expanding it to include those.
Okay. And I also, Mr. Chair, I was wondering about ensuring geographical equity in the program. It's interesting to hear you say there, did you say 20 or 21 service providers currently participate in the program? Did I misunderstand that? And the reason I ask is, do we have service providers in the Valley or other parts of LA? Because I would think it'd be inconvenient for people to get to downtown to be able to meet their hours with the current service provider, which is Weingart Center in
Yes.
downtown. So what does that look like?
So we actually have 28 different service providers.
28?
Yes.
I dislike that door so much, I can't.
It's really loud.
28 participating service providers.
Yes, and we do have service providers in the Valley as well, but there is still an issue with trying to cover all of LA County. So we have service providers throughout it, and we're still trying to expand. We try to get service providers in every single spa, but for example, in spa, I think it's spa 3, like towards Alhambra and the east side. We have some difficulty connecting to that spa, but we're still working on acquiring more family solution centers and more service providers. So we don't have them all come to downtown LA to complete their service. They can go to the Valley and they can go to different areas.
Who are your service providers in the Valley?
Let me get that. Just one moment.
Well, she gets that information. We also accept service being done in Orange County and, San Bernardino County because they move. They'll receive the citation in the city of LA, but now they're residing in Orange County. So we'll reach out to a service provider in those areas as well, and so they can do the work.
Chrysalis is our main service provider in the Valley.
I'd love to see their numbers, see what the participation rate is in the Valley and how many people complete the program.
Sure, absolutely.
And then my last question is, so what do we expect the next fiscal year? What do you expect the participation rate to be? Do we have any estimates?
I believe that right now, during our pilot program, we've been very cautious in the amount of advertisement that we've been doing, only because we're afraid to be inundated with a large number of calls and being unable to service those folks that are calling in for or to participate. We believe that as we use other avenues, other methods of advertising the program, that our numbers could easily double just because of the exposure that we have out there.
So will you be requesting a full-time staff to administer the program?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we, in anticipation of that growth, we're putting in a budget request for the 18-19 fiscal year.
Right. And you said Chrysalis is the only service provider in the entire Valley?
That's our main service provider there, but I can get you more specifics on all the service providers.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, all of you, for your
Thank
work
you.
on this. Look forward to hearing this again in Homelessness Committee.
That sounds good.
Has that been calendared yet, do you know?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Glad to move this from being a pilot into being permanent. So we'll approve the recommendations without objection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 10.
Item number 10 is a Bond and Blumenfield motion instructing DOT to present its transit service analysis report and recommendations for additions and/or modifications to the city's transit services, and the CAO to report relative to the funding necessary to implement proposed service changes.
And my understanding is we have 2 public comment cards, James Don and Waukesha Wilson.
James Dunn, Assistant General Manager for the Department of Aging. I'm here today because the department wants to express its support to the Department of Transportation and the report. The recommendations to provide the reinstatement of the quarterly subsidy to citywide clients and the addition of evenings dash service hours as well as weekend services and the 15-minute headway across the board are all important issues that would improve access to transportation for seniors. I think these recommendations are in line with the city's age-friendly initiative, Purposeful Aging Los Angeles. And I just want to give an example of how some of these recommendations would impact seniors. In 2016, the department conducted a mobility survey of 345 seniors. The number one use of transportation services were for medical appointments. Simply by changing the headway to 15 minutes addresses the fear that seniors have of missing their appointments with their doctors and then having to reschedule. And the extended hours allows them to have afternoon medical appointments and still go to the pharmacy to get their medication without getting stranded. So thank you very much, and we support the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, so public comment on that is closed. Staff could come on up.
Hello, council members and the Transportation Committee. Salita Reynolds, General Manager, LADOT. I'm joined by Corrine Ralph, who's the Transit Chief for LADOT, and just want to walk through briefly and focus our time mainly in discussion on the technical recommendations and the process by which we got here. The transit service analysis was an effort that LADOT undertook starting about 3 or 4 years ago to do 2 things. One, to understand the performance and sort of evaluate the health of our existing routes, and also identify places where there might be opportunities for expansion with an eye on the future and what's coming in transit and transportation. I just want to ground the conversation in our vision from our new strategic plan, which focuses very plainly on people and making sure that and equity, and making sure that the transportation choices that we provide treat people with dignity, that we're giving people a very high caliber of service, a high quality public realm, and that we're making sure that it's a system that really works for everyone. The goals really are about service and treating people with respect and really understanding the needs of everybody who uses the system. LADOT Transit in particular serves a role of moving people in and around communities and focusing on not just the peak travel, but really all transportation that happens. LADOT is in the midst right now of trying to define what we're calling a mobility Bill of Rights, to focus around specific core principles that we want to use and measure ourselves on for any service that we deliver in the city of Los Angeles. So focusing on things like safety and comfort, accessibility, reliability, equity, transparency, and culture and community. So these are really the kind of defining principles that we're using as we're thinking through what the next generation of LADOT transit service looks like. This is just a little bit of a look back at the process that we undertook to get us to this place. Workshops and public meetings all across the city, over 2,300 individual comments that we received, many of them from your offices and other city departments, because Dash and Commuter Express and LADOT Transit are things that communities care about deeply. And we see that in the level of engagement and input that Angelenos wanted to have in the future of the system. So just a little bit of sort of a beat on how we did this. So we did a comprehensive analysis. We did look at the sort of factors that contribute to successful Dash routes. So what are the places in the city, what are the characteristics they share where we see dash routes that are really thriving. And it's a combination of things, as you would expect. It's a combination of land use. It's a combination of how dense a place is, and how good the service is, how frequent it is. And then also there is a socioeconomic component. Dash is very much a lifeline service. One of our largest cohorts of riders is actually students. And so we look at places where we've got issues around low-income communities and disadvantaged communities. This is just a high-level look at the service improvement. So we have some route changes. We've increased frequency to 15-minute headways in key areas. We've extended our service hours so that Dash doesn't leave people stranded, runs later in the evening, going to 7-day-a-week service for all routes, and really focusing on strong connections to metro stations, both now and in the future. So we've got a list here of the 10 new lines that we're proposing. Here's the map showing the existing and proposed routes, existing in green and proposed new routes in red. So you can see, really trying to expand, build on where we have successful service in the core of the city, and also expand in parts of the city where we'd like to have a larger footprint. There are also some improvements that we're proposing to City Ride. City Ride is the sort of paratransit service that we provide for folks, and both increasing subsidies and increasing the taxi subsidies so that people can use that as well as the City Ride service itself. That, I think, is a really important sort of focus on some of the most vulnerable folks who need the service the most. And then the last thing that I want to highlight is, LADOT has a sort of a playbook for how we're going to prepare the city for the arrival and evolution of new transit services, and eventually of driverless shared electric vehicles. One of the first steps in that is creating a new service called microtransit. So Metro has a large microtransit pilot that they are undertaking. We are undertaking a complementary pilot. The way microtransit works is it's a smartphone-enabled transit service where the route might change based on demand. So you call for this on your smartphone. You have a shuttle vehicle like the one shown here that seats maybe 12 to 15 passengers. And that shuttle vehicle is going to serve this particular area based on where the demand is. So in the morning, the demand may be focused more in the heart of this service area, and in the evenings it may be that people want to get closer to the water and go to destinations where there are restaurants and other things to do at night. On the weekend, the service demand might change again. Microtransit pilots have been tried in lots of cities in the U.S., Washington, D.C., Cambridge, Kansas City, and even internationally in cities like Helsinki, with varying levels of success. So this is very much an emerging new type of public transit where there's a need right now to gather data and insight about where it might work and who it might serve and where it doesn't work. So this is our sort of first step into this arena, but I expect that we will be bringing other sort of pilot areas where we'd like to try this service back to this committee in the coming months. Because sort of there's this longer term look at what the future street might look like and what the future of transit might look like, where you have large, medium, and small-sized vehicles that are serving various trip functions all throughout a corridor, but really in the interest of improving safety, having a slow, comfortable environment in our sort of urban neighborhoods where the focus is really on enabling community, enabling people biking and walking, and getting to a vision of future transit. So the microtransit pilot is a baby step towards figuring out what our sort of future of public transit will look like in Los Angeles. So while we are doubling down on our service that we know works, we're also keeping an eye on the future and taking a leadership role in growing the state of the practice. So just a couple of notes on next steps. The CAO will be doing a report on some of the sort of fiscal implications, both on the revenue and on the expense side of our recommendations. And then eventually we'd like to get to sort of a fully baked report that council blesses that we can move forward and implement. And with that, I have Corinne here and happy to take questions.
Thank you. So just to put a finer point on it, between the route changes, the increased frequency, the longer service hours, the 7-day-a-week service, the improved connectivity, and the microtransit pilot project, you're talking about enhancing, expanding, or introducing service in CD2, CD3, 6, 7, 12, 13, 14, 11, and 5.
I think that about covers it.
That's pretty comprehensive. That's pretty good. What, you could just reiterate, what public input went into the recommendations?
So we had about 2,300 individual comments. We did 14 public workshops and about 30 presentations at neighborhood councils and business groups. And basically, we had a core set of workshops that we did, and then we just, alerted everybody that we were open to come give presentations to local groups and went wherever we were invited, and really received a very strong level of engagement at every single sort of stage of the planning that we went through. We issued an initial recommendation. We got a huge round of input and comments back. We responded to those comments. We put that out again. We got another round of feedback, and we iterated until we got to a place where we feel like what we have really reflects the input we received, coupled with the sort of practical realities of where things are going to be successful and our fiscal constraints.
So there's some of the expansion you can do in this year's budget, yes, with the existing?
Yes, you could.
And that would be expanding the weekend and evening service?
Yes, everything that doesn't need new vehicles we can do right away.
Okay.
Which means, that, as you said, weekend service, later evening service. We can also do city ride, and we can also do the demand response, the microtransit.
And you can do that within the existing budget. To do that, what do you need from us?
We do have a modest need for an additional funding in this fiscal 18-19 budget, which is on the order of magnitude of somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. So part of the overall.
Yes.
Okay. And then for other aspects of it, you need to procure more buses, right?
Yes.
And how long would that take?
Typically, right now, it could take as long as 12 to 18 months to get the buses after the order has been placed.
12 to 18 months?
Yes. We don't have a lot of experience with electric buses and how long that's going to take, but the figure is likely to be around a year to 16 months.
Call Amazon Prime. Overnight. 12 to 18 months, wow. We need to get moving then. And so CAO needs to come back and tell us how to pay for this. Not how not to, but how to pay for this. But what ballpark are we talking about?
All of the recommendations, including the 50-minute headway and route modifications, is going to cost a total of gross amount of around $62 million a year. The net cost is approximately $26 to $28 million.
Okay, well, this is why God created Prop A funds, right? Okay.
I do think it's worth noting that we are interested in thoughts, ideas, and recommendations about creative new revenue streams or financing mechanisms that we might consider in order to raise that. Because we really, $62 million, we can leverage the heck out of everything that we have at our disposal and get that number down closer to 25 to 30 million a year, but we are still going to have a gap to close. No question.
Well, you totally just killed my next question.
Sorry.
Which was about creative financing strategies. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that, though. That would definitely be part of our direction, is creative financing strategies to do what you're recommending, or to be able to maximize what we have so we can do even more than this, frankly, because the need is just going to continue to grow. Ms. Martinez?
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. So I know you talked about the public process or input that you underwent to determine this, but more specifically, is this the process you used to come up with the new routes, Or did you also was it based on ridership demand?
Yes, that's how we came up with the new routes. What we did, we worked in tandem with our consultant, a TMD firm that we hired. And they came up with a model that all the suggestions that came from the communities were put through this model to determine or project the success of a potential new route. We did it for the new routes as well as major modifications. So it was a data-driven process that allowed us to come up with a ranking of successful suggestions or suggested routes. And once that was done, once we came up with a list, we, the consultant and the DOT team, what we did, we took a second look to make sure that what we were proposing did not duplicate, for instance, metro service that exists right now. So the
that
list
was my other question. I'm glad you, so let me be more specific. How did you, so these routes, do they overlap or take into consideration the metro system service? Does it take it into account?
Yes, it did.
And that was all part of the
Yes.
consultation you were doing with your
Yes.
consultant? Okay. And the other question I had, how did you determine phase 1 and phase 2 improvements? How did you come up with that?
Well, based on our financial projections, we determined that it was rational and maybe more reasonable to assume that we can take the top 4 routes to implement them at this first phase. And indicated in, that if we're going to do the additional 6 routes, then we will need to identify another source of funding. So the top 4 routes was what we determined that was affordable during
And
this.
doable now?
Yes, this first round.
And the last question I have, Mr. Chair, is do we have to complete a new assessment before we implement phase 2?
Could you repeat that?
Do we need to complete a new assessment in order for us to implement phase 2?
No, they are already,
Okay,
yes, it was
ready to
already
go.
done,
Okay,
exactly.
Could the Sergeant at Arms please tell Mr. Herman to cut it out or get out? He's in the back banging on the screen. Please go ahead. Sorry. That was it? Okay. So then without objection, we will approve the motion, move this forward, and look forward to the CAO coming back with positive, constructive financing recommendations, some of which are creative. And then we will continue to expand service to our neighborhoods and our constituents. That wraps up the agenda, yes? We have nothing else, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much. We already finished, Mr. Walsh. We did public comment at the beginning.